Well, we'll clap for you too.
Not necessary. I typically end in prayer because I want everyone to stay in their heart space. Sometimes when we give people approval, we're up in our heads, and that's not where, the transformation happens for us. So when I was a new minister, though, I really appreciated the applause. It was like, did I do okay? Somebody please tell me I'm okay. But now I know it's not up to me, and it's not up to you. It's up to that dynamic thing that's we're open to, and that happens spontaneously. And it can be in a situation like this, or it can be when you're walking in nature, or it can be when you're looking in the eyes of a child or a baby, when you just know something and you're moved and you're inspired. And so that's our teaching, that wherever we are, God is, and it can happen in any place. This environment is, for me, and I think for many people, this is sort of could be a jump start to our spiritual practice or our spiritual realization. Because what we teach here is that you already know everything that you're going to hear at some level of your being. And so this then is somewhat like a catalyst to awaken in you that which is already you, and to awaken the Christ, to awaken the Spirit of God within you. Not to put it there or to add to it, for it is already complete in its fullness as the divine that you are. So it's important for us to realize, what we can expect from our spiritual home, our spiritual communities, and to be realistic about that. And then that's a whole other story. But anyway, I tried something different today. I came up with these points to ponder. I thought it would be kind of neat if I may or may not say any of these things, but they sure sounded good when I wrote them, you know what I mean? So it will be something to take with you, and they are words of truth regardless of whether I utter them or not. So those are yours to use as prompts throughout the week, perhaps. So when I was listening and we were saying our statement of faith again this morning, and certainly it's a statement of truth, and yet I find sometimes when I hear the words in my life, I want to say as my life. There's one presence, one power in the universe as my life. Because when we think in terms of in my life, our mortal mind, our normal way of thinking is that there's me, and then there's the world, and then there's God, whatever that is, that presence, which is not familiar to my human understanding. And when I think that God is in my life, there's a separation. It's like having people that live in your house. They're not you. They occupy the space that you live in. And I think it's important for us to, make any adjustments that we need to in our prayer life in order to know that this truth is that which is already in us and as us, because that then dissolves this notion of separation, which is what really gets us in trouble. That's when we get lost in the weeds of separation, and then we find ourselves seeking and not getting what we really want, because we don't believe that what it is that we're seeking is actually here, that it's removed from us in time and space by some circumstance or some situation that has not yet arisen yet in our experience in order for us to feel that peace and that love. And that is the illusion that we need to break through any chance we get. Yes? So that notion of being separate from our good is what causes us to be in a state of yearning and needing and wanting and not enough. And at any time that we can find a way to message and reframe our reality according to the truth, the sooner we get back to knowing the truth, not just as a concept, but as an indwelling, knowing experience. And this is why we're always talking, and I'm always talking about, get into your heart, get into your heart space. And when we say that, we're saying that the heart space is, and it's not just obviously the physiological space, although we may experience here as a physical sensation. When we are in our heart, we may feel warmth, we may feel loving feeling, we may feel peaceful, so we may associate it with the physiology of our heart space. But what I'm really talking about is the heart as an organ of spiritual perception. That the heart already lives and moves and has its very being in this truth. It is the part of you that has never left the garden, so to speak. It is that part of you that it is connected to the divine. It is the locus of truth and love and peace and wholeness. It is your lifeline to the truth. And so when we move into that space, we're really moving into a level of consciousness that is deep within us. We call that the heart. And that is what Jesus, and I believe all the master teachers were inviting us to do, was to take that inward journey. Stop looking outside of ourselves for this good, for this God, for this love, whatever it is that we're seeking, and to turn around. And this is a reversal of our normal way of perceiving, and that's why it's unfamiliar to us, because we're conditioned to look outside of ourselves to find what it is that we're wanting in life. And the world operates that way, so we have to understand that we come by it honestly. There's nothing wrong with that perceptual basis, except when we're using it to try to find our spiritual home. It will confound our efforts for spiritual realization. If that's the only way that we look for the good in life, we will be tripped up at every turn. We will constantly be frustrated by these efforts. And that's why so much of religion falls flat for a lot of people, I believe, is because they've been taught that there is this God that is somewhere out there, and that these series of steps or prostrations or conditions that need to be met for you to actually have this God experience, or that may not even be possible in this lifetime to have that God experience, because it's only a reward for a certain level of appropriate behavior in this life that then you will receive once you die and go on to this place called heaven. And all of that is a notion, not for the presence of God, but what? The absence of God. That is practicing the absence of God. And we're here to practice the presence of God. Does that make sense? So it's really just sort of catching ourselves. And Denise and I, we're both unity ministers and have been for decades, and yet we still find ourselves languaging things in a way that belie this truth, just when we just get caught up in the human experience like anybody does, and we find ourselves, yearning for something in our life or something to happen, and it's all, well intended, but oftentimes we find ourselves in a far off country, and like the prodigal son, and we're thinking that that's the way. And when all along, what we really want to do is we want to remember the truth. We want to wake up from this notion that some circumstance or condition, however well intended it might be, however desirable it may be from the human experience, is not a barrier to my experience of love and peace right now. And that's true for all of us. And that's why when we say all is well, which we say at the end of every service here, that's what we're talking about. We're not saying all is well in the perspective of the human. Obviously, there's great suffering in the human experience. We've had our own. We know people who have, many of us are remembering 20 years ago, the 9/11. What a horrific human tragedy and event that was. And we know that, hundreds of millions of people have died in wars over centuries. So we don't do a spiritual bypass. When we say all is well, we're referencing something that doesn't change. It's not on the landscape of the ups and downs of the human life and circumstances and conditions. It's not related to that. It's something that is prior to that. It's prior to us even coming into this world, this notion that we are connected with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And in that reality, we are safe, we are well, we are whole, and we are complete. There's nothing missing. There's no lack of love. There's no lack of peace. There's no lack of any of the things for which we oftentimes negotiate our human experience in order to achieve. And so when we're saying all is well, we're reminding ourselves that, the appearance may be that are trials and tribulations, as Jesus said, but be of good cheer because there is an overcoming power, and that overcoming power is the way that we can turn around from looking out at life for our good and finding the well of love and peace and joy that is within us. Does this make sense? Yeah, so this is why, sometimes people listen to unity messages and think that they're airy-fairy, unrealistic, New Age, Pollyannishism or something, and, just miss what we're saying. You have to understand the theology from which those statements are uttered. When we say, it's all good and it's all is well, we are not making an assessment of the human scene, and we are not discounting the suffering and the difficulties in the human life, but we are aware of something greater that is simultaneous and behind the scenes and within each one of us, even those who have left us, even those who have died, even those who have suffered in the human body. All is well with their soul. All is well with their soul. There's a little thing I wanted to share with you today. This comes from one of my people who I follow. He's a Vedanta teacher of non-dual spirituality, which is why I've been describing non-dual. It's just a fancy name for there's only one thing going on, one presence, one power. There isn't you and God, and there's this one presence and one power, and we are its expression. And we struggle with that a little bit. So in trying to determine what is true and what is truth, this particular teacher said they came up with a test. It's a three-prong test to determine what is real. Would you like to hear it?
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to share it with you. Okay, good. So if something is real, it has to satisfy these three standards or qualities. First of all, number one, it cannot disappear. If something disappears, it has to disappear into something. Right? And the metaphor he uses for that is ice and water. If you have a piece of ice and you put it into water, what happens to the ice? It melts and it disappears, right? So the ice disappears into the water. So if it was real, then it wouldn't disappear. So the reality of the ice is not ice, it is what? It's water. It's water. So, you put the ice in a glass of water, the ice disappears. The ice disappears in the water is the reality of the ice. If we go into the ice and look at the substance of what it's made of, it's something called water. The second test is that it cannot change. It cannot change. So you take the metaphor a little further and you say the reality of the ice is not ice, it's water. And then what happens if you look closely at water, you see what? You see these molecules that are called what? H2O. H2O, right? So when water evaporates, the sun comes out and water evaporates, goes into water, becomes water vapor. So then the reality of water is not water, it's H2O. It's something that doesn't change, right? So this is like now pointing us in the direction of who and what we are. But there's one more test, or the third test, and that is not, this metaphor doesn't work for that, but it is that it cannot be known by something other than itself. For something to be real, it cannot be known by something other than itself. If it can be known by something other than itself, then it is only known, then its reality is borrowed from that which it is known by. So it can't be known by anything other than itself. If it's known by something other than itself, then it has a relative reality, but to have an absolute reality, it cannot be known by anything other than itself. So these three qualities, it cannot disappear, it cannot change, and it cannot be known by itself. What in your experience satisfies those three qualities? And this is the sort of the koan, of the day. But I'm going to give you the answer. You can contemplate this on your own because it's worthwhile. When we tend to think of the truth of us, we stay pretty much in the descriptors of those things which do change. My body, I can think of myself as a body, right? We all do. Does my body change?
Yes.
Have we noticed?
Most definitely.
Definitely not, 18 inches long and 7.5 pounds. Not to say nothing of the further changes that have happened as we have aged. And then, we give ourselves names. I'm a Larry, and you're a Donna, We just go on and on. Names, but can we change our name? Yeah, so we can change our name, and we can change our bodies too, right? We could do all kinds of things. We could lose a limb. If I lost an arm or a leg or an eye or anything, I would still be essentially me, right? And I could change my name. I could easily do that. You can even change your gender today, right? So you can say, I'm a man, I'm a woman. No, well, that's not who you really are, because those things are all subject to change. So what of you doesn't change? It doesn't change. Yeah, then we get into this sort of metaphysical realm, right? But even more fundamentally than any other word we would come up with, there's something that we all know, and we have this experience all of the time, and we forget it. And the experience is really a nameless, objectless sense of being. In other words, the sense I am. The sense I am. That's the one thing that you've had from the beginning of consciousness, whenever that was. And it has never left you. The sense I am. It's almost like, some faiths use the idea of a witness, one who's witnessed your life, but never really was affected by your life. Sort of like beyond the scenes reporter, who witnessed all the drama of your life, but was immune from the travails of your life. It was never diminished, it was never enlarged, it was never aggrandized, it was never credited or blamed. It was just there, as one that was aware of your life. And that's why Jesus said, before Abraham was, I am. Before Abraham was, I am. He wasn't talking about a body, obviously, which some people would say, oh, that's, what's the word? Reincarnation. Thank you. Hopefully that's not going to happen too much. That's a word that, anyway, it's a lovely word. But he was not referencing some notion of a previous lifetime. He was talking about this essence that was not born in a body. Before Abraham was, I am. He was talking about what his essence. And the essence of you and I is that which is invulnerable to the changes of life. It's that which has never been affected by what's happened. It hasn't gotten, it doesn't get happy, it doesn't get sad. It just sort of lives in the state of fullness and completeness. It has no needs. It has no wants. It's always fulfilled. And it cannot be known by anything other than itself. It doesn't disappear. I mean, it's always there. The sense of I am, that sense of existence, is always there. It may be noticing lots of changes in your form. It may be noticing changes in your circumstances. It may be noticing, situations that come and go. But it doesn't come and go. It's not your thoughts. It's not your feelings. You have thoughts, right? And what happens with thoughts? Thoughts come and thoughts go, don't they? All the time. This discursive mind that we have. And then feelings. I'm sad. And that sadness goes. I'm happy. And then that's gone. But what notices all of this? It's the I am. It's the awareness. It's another word. It's a C word, big word. Consciousness. Ever heard that word in a Unity church? Only almost every Sunday, right? Yeah. Consciousness. It doesn't disappear. It doesn't change. And it cannot be known by anything other than itself. It knows, the only thing it can say about itself is I am. It may not know what I am, but I know that I am. We can be confused in our identity, but we're not confused in our reality. The reality of our being is the one thing that is changeless and always there. And this is what Jesus was talking about when he said, I am in you and you are in me and we are in God. He was talking about this consciousness, this essential existence of our being. And that is the part of us that is always well, regardless of what's going on in life. That part of us lies undisturbed beneath the surface of life appearances and situations and circumstances, no matter the travails we've been through, no matter if we have a lot of money or we lose all our money or we have good health or we are in poor health, there's a part of us, that part of us, which is essentially who and what we really are, not the false self that we've come to believe we are, is there. And it exists, and it's invulnerable, and it's everlasting, and it's been there from the beginning, and it will be that part which goes on after we die, after the body gets laid down. And that's the good news. That's the good news of our teaching. That's the presence, that's the power, that's the love. So, that as a backdrop, then I want to share this story, which many of you have heard. The song, It Is Well With My Soul. I'm sure many of you have heard it. And he wrote these words. His name was Horatio Spafford. He wrote these words. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. I don't know how many of you know the story though, so I'm going to give you this. It'd be admirable for anyone to write this and to have that consciousness that no matter what sorrows are going on, it is well with my soul. But to have lived these extraordinary sorrows that he endured and to write that, it tells us something about his deep appreciation of what we talked about this morning. He endured uncommon grief. The death of his only son in 1871 at the age of 4, shortly followed by the Great Chicago Fire, which ruined him financially. He had been a successful lawyer. Then in 1873, he had planned to travel to Europe with his family on a ship, but he sent the family ahead because he was delayed on business. And he sent the family head on the ship, and while crossing the Atlantic, the ship sank rapidly after collision with a sailing ship, and all 4 of the Spafford's daughters died. His wife Anna survived and sent him the now famous telegram, "Saved alone." Shortly afterwards, as he traveled to meet his grieving wife, he was inspired to write those words as his ship passed near where his daughters had died. "When sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul." It's been said that a bad day for the ego is a good day for the soul. It just really takes great discernment and spiritual depth to retain this awareness of this essential wholeness and goodness. And it isn't put out here. I'm not putting this out here as a standard that we're supposed to compare ourselves to this man who was able to say it is well with my soul after he lost so many children in his life and endured such pain. It is for us to recognize that regardless of whether we can utter those words or believe that or know that or get there in consciousness, it remains true. See, the truth never goes anywhere. We take our circuitous journeys away from the truth as we are conditioned and we are programmed and we are influenced by life events to believe in something other than the truth, yes? And that's normal and that's natural and that's to be expected. But the truth is always waiting for us to come back home. It doesn't go anywhere. We journey out, like Jesus used the story of the prodigal. He journeyed out, but all the while his good was at home. And the Father loved him, and gave him his inheritance. In other words, we are given choice as to how we want to travel in this life, and what we want to believe, and what we want to hold to be the truth, and how we want to see ourselves and hold ourselves and feel that what we are and what we're made of. And we can believe that we're bodies, and we can believe that we're our minds, and we can believe that we are our thoughts, and we can believe that we are our feelings. We can put our I am in front of anything that we want to. And what we connect to our I am is the experience that we have, yes? If I say I am, poor, I am, unlovable, I am unworthy, I don't matter, whatever it is, whatever we put with our I am will be our experience. But that doesn't change the truth. Because the I am, without any attachment to it, with an attachment to any object, remains in its pure nature, and it waits for us to come back to it. And it is the ultimate homecoming when we exhaust sometimes all of our feelings and our reactions to life, and we feel bereft of any comfort, and there's some act of surrender, maybe you know this, where you finally just sort of give up railing against life and circumstances, and you fall back in sort of a sense of giving up. And when you give up, you let go of all of your attachments to what you know. And then you fall back into the most essential knowing of all, the I am that I am. And it is in those moments that we have this inexplicable peace. Jesus called it peace beyond human understanding. Yes? It doesn't make any sense to the rational mind. How is it that I could have peace? How is it that I could have joy? How is it that how could joy be bubbling up in the midst of this tragedy, this difficulty? It's because it's there. It's essentially at the root of you. And it's that that well of well-being that is our eternal salvation. That's where we go. That's the only place we can go to get the kind of lasting peace that we want in our life. So I want to close with this song, "It Is Well With My Soul." And what's special about this is I was trying to find a version of this song that was sort of unitized, because the traditional version of this song has got, blood and Satan and everything else. And I didn't think you'd appreciate that version. So the only one I could find, and this is so kind of ironic and poetic, that this is from Unity of Wilmington, North Carolina, which was the last church that Richard Levy served at as senior minister. And this is only a few, maybe a couple months, or maybe less than that, before he made his transition. And the soloist is singing the song, and Richard was unable to walk at that point in his life, and he was in a seated position, and the soloist, you'll see, was standing behind him, singing this beautiful song, and Richard was reacting to it. So that will be our closing prayer to watch. That's right.